pow! And then the hood was like, pow, pow!
That kid's got some iron fists on him. He might have some competition.
Well, the West could use another hero.
Welcome back to another What If episode with What If Season 3, Episode 6, titled What If 1872. This is a Western-styled episode taking place in the Wild West, featuring Shang-Chi and Hawkeye. So this episode takes inspiration from Marvel's War Zones comics, which was a series of comics that took place on Battleworld during the Second Secret Wars, which they had a comic titled 1872. So in that storyline, Sheriff Steve Rogers faces corruption and fear in the boomtown of Timely. And we also have Anthony Stark, aka Tony Stark, making an appearance, who helps Steve Rogers. And the town slowly gets from bad to worse when a stranger arrives in town and changes the town forever. We even have characters like Bullseye, Elektra, Grizzly, Doc Ock, and Wilson Fisk all making an appearance in that comic. This episode definitely takes inspiration from that by using the 1872 and the Wild West theme, but it definitely doesn't take all the characters that were within it. But as we go into the episode starts off with a burning film effect, which is just like how they start Western films. We have Shang-Chi and Hawkeye being heroes in this realm as they chase down the Hood. Now both Simu Lee and Haley Steinfeld come back to voice their respective characters, and we even have John Walker showing up, who we first saw in The Falcon and Winter Soldier, and will be appearing in the Thunderbolts. And I will say, the start of the episode had a pretty cool fight scene. I love the martial art fights, and I think this episode I enjoyed a lot more than the last couple. Honestly, I love Hawkeye and I like Shang-Chi, so just having them kind of go around the Wild West was fun. Even though the ending was a little underwhelming, I still liked the journey to it. Now, when we see Hawkeye, she's a sharpshooter, just like how she is in the MCU, and Kate is wearing her colors like she does in the MCU as well, with the purple on, and Shang-Chi's bandana resembles the red on his suit from the MCU. And then John Walker ends up pointing them in the direction of Point Pegasus, which is a reference to Project Pegasus that we saw in the Avengers and Captain Marvel movie. And like I said before, they're after the Hood. And this is the second episode where I felt like Ironheart, the series, was supposed to come out before this, because the Hood is also appearing in that as well. He'll be the main villain going after Riri Williams, and I'm curious to see how they deal with him in the MCU. Because in the comics, his name is Parker Robbins, who broke into a warehouse with his cousin and shot a demon who was residing in there. He ended up killing it, and then after that, he stole the beast's cloak and boots that enabled him to fly and become invisible while holding his breath. Now, in the comics, there isn't a demon in the cloak necessarily, but it is connected to Dormammu. But in the MCU, they've talked about how they're going to have Mephisto in it, so this is going to be a tie to Mephisto instead, which definitely seems like, in this version, that there were souls within the Hood corrupting the soul that wore it, which I could definitely see that's how they're going with it in the MCU, and I'm interested to seeing how they play it when we see him in the live-action appearance during Ironheart. Now, after Kate and Shang-Chi start their adventure, we get the Watcher narrating about how the multiverse gets weirder and weirder as they go further into the edges of the multiverse. We get to see Toad Thor and Crocodile Loki, which we first saw Crocodile Loki during Loki Season 1, and, you know, it would have been cool to get them in a What If show. I feel like this is like a perfect episode for What If, is what if Thor was a frog and what if Loki was a crocodile. We get a Pirates What If with Crossbones and possibly Black Widow next to him, and I'm not sure who the third person might be. Then he talks about a reality with a singing Ultron who was programmed for show tunes instead. Now that's weird and wacky and definitely feels like a What If story that, honestly, I feel like I would have wanted to see. However, the Watcher keeps talking about how no matter where you go, there's injustice. Kind of showing why the Watcher intervenes and why he intervened later in the episode, because he can no longer stand by the fact that these universes and heroes are failing. So very interesting to see how they're setting up this character. And, you know, next episode, he's definitely being put on trial because the next episode's titled What If the Watcher Disappeared? And we're definitely getting some intense stuff as the next two episodes come in, and most likely the big team up ones. So we'll see what happens next. So in this universe, Zhu Jialing escaped her father's regime in 1860 and fled to America, which is her running away from Wenwu, which is kind of like how Shang-Chi did in his movie where he went to America after he left his family. Which in that movie, we also first met Zhu Jialing when she was running that underground fight club. And they also go over how the Hood preyed on the weak and went after towns and destroyed them, but Jialing ended up going after the Hood and losing, which sent Shang-Chi on the quest to look for her and find his sister, and even joining forces with Kate Bishop in order to do that. But after they give us all the explainers about what's going on with this episode and universe, we have Kate and Shang-Chi finding this burnt down town that the Hood just left. And they end up finding a kid that survived named Jun Fun. And in the comics, Jun Fun is an Iron Fist from 1878 AD. He was active in the Wild West. So they finally gave us an Iron Fist in the main MCU timeline that wasn't the Netflix series that just recently became canon. So we finally have Iron Fist in this series, and it's absolutely awesome. Because it's just the first tease. And I've heard that there was supposed to be a Shang-Chi versus Iron Fist what if. So definitely in this moment, we are kind of getting a little bit of a payoff here where we're not getting that one specifically, but we're at least getting him in this Wild West version with the character that was actually from the Wild West in the comics. So that was pretty cool. And we also found out that Shang-Chi is actually called 10 Rings in this universe, and that's his hero name. So instead of actually having the 10 rings like we saw in the Shang-Chi movie, he is called the 10 Rings. Just a play on that movie title and what was going on with that main plot. And I love how June Fon does a little bit of like karate or martial arts there, and Shang-Chi is impressed by it. So just showing that he is going to become Iron Fist. He's going to become that fighter in the Wild West, which I thought was really awesome. After that, we have them finding the hover train, which is like Iron Man's repulsors as it's going through the desert. And as they're jumping onto it, Shang-Chi says Kate has strong forearms, which is a reference to her being Hawkeye in the main MCU with using a bow and arrow, because it takes a lot of strength in your arms to pull back the bowstring. When they're on the train, they mention Stark Munitions, Hammer Steel, and Cross Manufacturing, all for Tony Stark, Justin Hammer, and Darren Cross. And the device powering this is definitely a reference to the Tesseract and the high-speed engine from Captain Marvel, but also could be a reference to Iron Man with his arc reactor being in the middle and being blue. We find out the workers are stuck in a trance, and then we end up meeting Sonny Birch, who tells Shang-Chi to put his Fists of Fury away, which is a reference to a Bruce Lee movie. And Sonny Birch is a character we first met in Ant-Man and the Wasp, where he was after Hank Pym's technology, because he was a black market technology dealer. We have Sonny Birch going after June Fon and trying to kill him until the Watcher intervenes. Once again, intervening 2 episodes in a row now, breaking the rules and not following what he's supposed to do. Pretty much the Watcher's just been getting more and more involved since season 1, and I'm honestly surprised they didn't start with him getting involved now from the very first episode of the season and just have him doing something every episode until the next one where we're going to have him dealing with other Watchers. Shang-Chi meets the Hood, and the Hood ends up trying to recruit him for their cause. And the Hood has superpowers and can turn invisible just like how their comic counterpart can. And the way they're able to take on Shang-Chi, it shows that they actually have strength. So the Hood is giving the user strength in order to fight this other opponent, because you could tell with the way he was fighting and the fact that broke one of the poles that they were stronger than a normal human. Now we get a slow-mo Shang-Chi punch, just like how Shang-Chi punched the guy in the bus during the movie. Turns out Xialing killed the Hood, then became the Hood afterwards, kind of showing that the Hood corrupts the person that takes it over, making her think she's saving these people, but instead she's putting them in a trance and holding them hostage. We also see her using the chain, just like how she uses her rope dart in the movie Shang-Chi. One of the things I noticed too is that in the Shang-Chi movie, when we first get introduced to her in the cage match, she's wearing a hood and walking in where you can't see her face, which is kind of the same here, where when we first meet her, she's wearing the hood covering her face, making it look like she's the Hood. So I thought that was a cool little reference there, if it was one. Maybe I'm pulling, but I thought it was, I think it works. And in the end, it was a pretty cool fight scene, watching Shang-Chi versus Sister as he has to take on the one family member he came to save. So some cool moments there. And then we pick up with Kate, who's been put in a hypnotic trance by Sonny. And I've seen people talk about how the pocket watch might be a play on the Mind Stone from Loki's scepter, because people are getting put in a trance just like how Loki did in the first Avengers movie. Which, I mean, that could be a reference. If the Tesseract is in the train, powering it, Sonny has the Mind Stone controlling people, I think that works. And it would mean that the Hood here has 2 of the Infinity Stones. However, as we go forward, we find out that Sonny is the one that killed Kate's parents, which sends her on the path for revenge. And we get a pretty badass moment after June Fan wakes them up by hitting the bell, releasing Kate, and she just absolutely obliterates them all with her Hawkeye precision, which I thought was awesome. But she lets Sonny live just to make him suffer, which I guess makes sense. She wants him to suffer. He can't get a quick death, and she's gonna get her revenge one way or another. Then when we pick up with Shang-Chi fighting his sister, he refuses to fight his sister, which is just like how when he's fighting her in the cage match, he refuses to fight her until she knocks him out. Which in this, she goes for the kill instead, and then Kate puts her on the ground. Which after Zhu Ling falls to the ground dying, we see that her scars kind of seem to fade, which I think that's what's happening here, as when the Hood is leaving, that demonic possession that was part of her is gone. And the Hood goes off to find another unsuspecting victim to corrupt. Because the way they made it look like in this is that there's definitely something in the Hood corrupting people, which I could see the way they might be playing in the MCU. As we go into the Ironheart series, I'm interested to seeing what they do with it, because I think they're changing a little bit up from the comics, especially because this isn't like the most major villain that a lot of people know of, and I'm curious to see what they do with it. But our heroes have won the day, so they go home, and we have the biggest Iron Fist reference in this, with Kate saying June Fon has iron fists, which I thought was fun. Really putting that in there to show that this is an Iron Fist, and hopefully setting up Iron Fist showing back up in the main MCU at some point. And apparently he might be showing up in Shang-Chi too, so whenever we get that, we might be seeing him once again. We have Shang-Chi saying the sun's getting real low, Hawkeye, which is a reference to Black Widow talking to the Hulk, saying the sun's getting real low in Age of Ultron. And then at the end, we have the Watcher being confronted by the other Watchers for intervening, and they capture him, which is all setting up the Watcher being put on trial for intervening in all these universes, as they're literally not supposed to do. Also, I've heard that the next episode is actually going to be the Storm Thor episode, so I guess that episode might be the one where we're getting a bunch of characters showing up again. So I'm very curious to see what happens, and I'm very excited to see a Thor Storm. Maybe I'll love the last 2 episodes. I don't know. What If hasn't been amazing this season. I actually enjoyed this one because I kind of like the Wild West theme. I love Kate Bishop and I love Shang-Chi, so I really like those characters, so this one kind of hit a little bit more for me. And I like the Wild West theme, even though I feel like they probably could have done more with it. It definitely feels like some of these episodes could benefit from maybe being an hour to kind of flush out the story, give us more explanation, and kind of dive into these characters a little bit more. And the fact that this is the last season is still disappointing. I'm kind of hoping that they bring What If back later down the road after they do Secret Wars and everything to kind of have fun with it rather than focus on these big multiverse stories. Let's just have fun with it. Do the most random things and just make it a meme for some of the episodes. Like even the Howard the Duck one wasn't amazing or anything, but I thought it felt like what a What If story should be. Just the most random shit that happens, and I think it worked. Where I think they could definitely benefit from doing that in a new What If series if we get it eventually. I'm kind of excited for the last 2 episodes, even though I'm not super hyped for it, but I want to see what happens. So let me know, after you watch this episode, what did you think of it? And were there any other Easter eggs and references you noticed? Let me know down in the comments, and we'll talk about it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with all my videos. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you tomorrow when we watch another episode of What If.